January 1944. The North Atlantic in winter. Waves 30 feet high crash across the deck of a 1,300-ton sloop, making 15 knots through a gale. On the bridge of HMS Starling, Captain Frederic John Walker has not slept in 2 days. He is hunting. Somewhere beneath this freezing ocean, a German submarine is running silent, and Walker's ASTIC operator has just picked up the faintest echo at 1,500 yards. What happens next will become the stuff of Admiralty legend. Over the next 25 days, Walker and his 5 sloops will destroy 6 German submarines in a single patrol. The Admiralty will call it the greatest cruise perhaps ever undertaken by an escort group. The First Lord of the Admiralty will personally greet the 800 crew members when they return to Liverpool. And the German U-boat service, which had terrorized the Atlantic for 4 years, will learn that the hunters have become the hunted. The ship that made this possible looked nothing like a weapon of war. She carried no torpedoes, made barely 20 knots, and had none of the glamour that came with a destroyer command. The modified Black Swan-class sloop was the kind of vessel ambitious officers avoided because a posting aboard one was considered a career dead end. The man commanding it was someone the Navy had nearly discarded entirely. This is the story of how the most boring ship in the Royal Navy, commanded by a man his own superiors had tried to retire, became the most lethal submarine killer in the history of naval warfare. To understand why Walker mattered, you need to understand what Britain was facing. By March 1943, the Battle of the Atlantic had reached its absolute crisis. In that single month, 108 Allied ships were torpedoed and sunk. 569,000 tons of shipping were sent to the bottom of the ocean. 85 of those ships were lost in convoy, attacked by wolf packs of U-boats that outnumbered their escorts and overwhelmed them with coordinated strikes. The official Royal Navy historian would later write that the Germans never came so near to disrupting communications between the New World and the Old as they did in those 20 days. Over the course of the war, approximately 3,500 Allied merchant ships would be sunk in the Atlantic. More than 30,000 British merchant seamen were killed. 175 Allied warships were lost. And the problem was getting worse, not better. Germany was building U-boats faster than the Allies could destroy them, peaking at 387 submarines launched in 1944 alone. The convoy escort system, the backbone of Britain's defense, was sinking roughly 2 U-boats per month across all 400 escort ships combined. At that rate, Britain would starve before Germany ran out of submarines. The man who would change those numbers was born on the 3rd of June, 1896 in Plymouth, into a naval family. His father was a commander in the Royal Navy. Frederic John Walker entered the Royal Naval College at Osborne as a 13-year-old cadet in May 1909, progressed to Dartmouth, and passed out in April 1913. During the First World War, he served on destroyers, witnessing the first U-boat campaign that nearly brought Britain to its knees. That experience shaped everything that followed. In 1923, Walker volunteered for the newly established anti-submarine warfare school at HMS Osprey in Portland. Anti-submarine warfare was considered an unglamorous backwater in an interwar navy that prized battleship commands and fleet actions. While his peers pursued postings that led to promotion, Walker spent the next 16 years mastering ASDIC sonar technology, developing depth-charge tactics, and running experiments that no one in the Admiralty considered important. His own First Lieutenant Alan Byrne would later write that Walker had devoted the 30 years of his naval career to the development of anti-submarine tactics and weapons. 30 years spent preparing for a war that, when it finally arrived, the Navy almost did not let him fight. The problem was promotion. Walker's passion for what his superiors considered a niche specialty produced fitness reports that were less than glowing. He was repeatedly passed over for promotion to captain. His seniors saw an outspoken officer, bored and frustrated in a series of meaningless assignments. By 1939, the 43-year-old commander was scheduled for early retirement. Even after his early wartime successes, senior figures at the Admiralty sought to brand him a lucky heretic rather than acknowledge that his methods worked. However, the war that Walker had spent his entire career preparing for had arrived, and when the Navy finally gave him a command, the results were immediate and lethal. The weapon Walker needed already existed. The modified Black Swan-class sloop displaced 1,350 tons, roughly one-third the size of a fleet destroyer. Her maximum speed was just under 20 knots. She carried no torpedoes. Her primary armament was 6 4-inch guns in 3 twin mountings, useful against aircraft and surfaced submarines, but hardly the stuff of fleet engagements. In an era when young officers dreamed of commanding destroyers, a sloop posting was where careers went to die. But every characteristic that made the sloop boring made it lethal against submarines. Start with speed. ASDIC sonar, the only reliable means of detecting a submerged U-boat, became completely useless above 20 knots. A destroyer racing at 32 knots was essentially deaf. The sloop's modest 20 knots kept her in the sweet spot where sonar contact was clear and reliable. That 20 knots was also just fast enough to outrun a surfaced Type 7 U-boat, making 17.7 knots. Then consider endurance. A destroyer consumed fuel at a tremendous rate. A sloop could cruise at 15 knots for 7,000 nautical miles without refueling. Walker could stay at sea for weeks, hunting continuously, while destroyers were forced to return to port. Stability mattered enormously. The modified Black Swan's 38 feet 6 inches beam, 1 foot wider than the original class, gave her a stable weapons platform in the mountainous seas of the North Atlantic. When a destroyer was rolling so violently that depth-charge crews could barely stand, a sloop was still delivering accurate attacks. But the decisive advantage was ammunition. A typical fleet destroyer carried between 30 and 40 depth charges. The modified Black Swan carried 110. Walker's tactics demanded sustained, methodical attacks lasting hours or even days. A destroyer would run out of depth charges and have to withdraw. Walker just kept attacking. The ship that embodied these advantages was HMS Starling, pennant number U-66. Built by Fairfield Shipbuilding at Govan on the Clyde, she was launched on the 14th of October 1942 and commissioned on the 1st of April 1943. She would become the most successful anti-submarine warship in Royal Navy history. Walker's first opportunity to prove his methods came not aboard a Black Swan, but aboard the smaller sloop HMS Stork, leading the 36th Escort Group during Convoy HG76 in December 1941. What followed was the first clear Allied convoy victory of the war. Over 9 days, Walker's escorts and their supporting aircraft destroyed 4 U-boats. One of those kills belongs entirely to Walker himself. On the 19th of December, U-574 torpedoed the destroyer HMS Stanley, which exploded with few survivors. Walker and Stork closed in on the submarine and forced it to the surface with depth charges. What followed was a circling chase at close quarters, each vessel trying to turn inside the other. When Stork closed so tight that her main guns could no longer depress far enough to fire, Walker did something that no tactical manual recommended. He drove Stork directly into U-574. The sloop's bow struck the submarine and shoved it onto its side. As Stork ground across the U-boat's hull, Walker dropped 10 depth charges on shallow settings. The submarine was destroyed. Walker later wrote with characteristic understatement that he was surprised to find by the plot that Stork had turned 3 complete circles. Among the other submarines lost during HG76 was U-567, commanded by Engelbert Endras, one of Germany's top U-boat aces. Endras was killed with his entire crew. Karl Donitz, commander of the U-boat fleet, was so shaken by this loss that he concealed Endras's death from other U-boat crews for weeks, afraid of what it would do to morale. However, the Admiralty's response to Walker's triumph was bewildering. In October 1942, they brought him ashore to a desk job as Captain D, Liverpool. Walker was furious. He bombarded his superiors with requests to return to sea. What he wanted was not just another escort command. He wanted something entirely new. The concept Walker advocated had never been tried before. Traditional escort groups were tied to specific convoys. When they detected a U-boat, they faced an impossible choice: stay with the convoy and let the submarine escape, or pursue the submarine and leave the merchant ships unprotected. Walker argued for support groups, free-ranging hunter-killer forces that could reinforce threatened convoys and then pursue U-boats to destruction without time constraints. Instead of waiting for submarines to attack, he wanted to go out and find them. Admiral Sir Max Horton, the new commander-in-chief, Western Approaches, agreed. In April 1943, Walker was given command of the newly formed 2nd Support Group. His ships were HMS Starling as flagship, joined by Wild Goose, Wren, Woodpecker, Kite, and later Cygnet and Magpie. All of them sloops. All of them purpose-built for exactly the kind of sustained submarine hunting Walker had spent 30 years preparing for. The tactics Walker developed aboard Starling transformed anti-submarine warfare. The fundamental problem with attacking a submerged submarine was simple. ASDIC surged forward from the attacking ship, but depth charges were dropped from the stern. As a ship passed directly over its target, it lost sonar contact in a blind spot. Experienced U-boat commanders learned to predict this moment and maneuver aside while the charges sank harmlessly behind them. Walker solved this with what he called the creeping attack. One ship, the Director, maintained ASDIC contact from 1,500 to 2,000 yards behind the submarine. The U-boat could hear the Director's sonar pings, but at what seemed a safe distance. Meanwhile, a second ship, the Attacker, approached with her own ASDIC switched off, creeping forward at just 5 knots. At that speed, her propellers were virtually silent to the submarine's hydrophones. The directing ship guided the Attacker onto the target using radio telephone, calling out bearing corrections in real time. When the attacking ship was positioned directly over the U-boat, she released a prearranged depth charge pattern. The submarine's first warning was the explosion overhead. The 5-knot approach speed carried a second advantage that Walker had not originally anticipated. Germany had developed the GNAT, an acoustic homing torpedo designed to track the propeller noise of escort vessels. The GNAT could not lock onto a target moving at 5 knots. Walker's creeping attack was accidentally immune to the most dangerous weapon in the U-boat arsenal. If you are finding this deep dive into British engineering interesting, consider subscribing. It takes a moment and helps the channel continue producing content like this. Now, back to what happened when Walker unleashed these tactics on the U-boat fleet. Operation Plaster was Walker's barrage variant, and nothing in the U-boat arsenal could survive it. 3 ships advanced in line abreast over the submarine simultaneously, while a 4th directed from behind, maintaining ASDIC contact. On Walker's signal, all 3 attackers released depth charges together, creating a rolling wall of explosions that left no escape. If the submarine turned to port, it drove directly under the flanking ship's charges. If it turned to starboard, the same thing happened. If it held course, the center ship's pattern destroyed it. One documented Plaster attack dropped 86 depth charges in 3 minutes. Walker also developed what he called the hold-down tactic. Rather than trying to destroy a submarine that had gone deep, he simply kept it down. Hour after hour, his sloops circled overhead, dropping occasional charges to prevent the submarine from surfacing. Eventually, the crew's air supply ran out, their batteries died, and they were forced to the surface into waiting gunfire. One of these hunts lasted more than 30 hours. Walker's captains trained so intensively that they operated with near telepathic coordination. Horton later eulogized that Walker welded his own group into a splendidly efficient band of brothers who finally became so imbued with his methods that they could, and did, carry out his wishes with the barest minimum of signals. Nothing like it had ever been seen in the Atlantic. Walker's first kill with the 2nd Support Group came on the 1st of June, 1943, when Starling destroyed U-202 after a 15-hour pursuit. The German commander took his submarine to 850 feet, far beyond its designed depth, in a desperate attempt to escape. Walker's depth charges only reached 600 feet, so he simply waited until the submarine's air and batteries failed. He dubbed it another glorious 1st of June, echoing the 1794 battle. On the 30th of July, 1943, in the Bay of Biscay, Walker encountered 3 U-boats traveling on the surface. 2 of them were Type 14 supply submarines, known as milk cows, vital logistics vessels that refueled and rearmed combat U-boats at sea. Walker hoisted signal flags 2, W, N, General Chase. This traditional Royal Navy signal released ships from formation to pursue the enemy independently at maximum speed. It had been used only twice before in modern naval history, once by Drake against the Spanish Armada, once by Nelson at the Battle of the Nile. Walker waved his cap in the air on Starling's bridge, as though urging her to greater efforts. In 10 minutes, Germany lost 2 irreplaceable milk cows and a combat submarine. 3 U-boats destroyed in a single action. The General Chase signal flags from that day are preserved at Bootle Town Hall. But the patrol that defined Walker's legend came in late January 1944. The 2nd Support Group sailed from Liverpool on the 29th of January and returned approximately 4 weeks later, having destroyed 6 German submarines: U-592 on the 31st of January, U-762 on the 8th of February, U-734 on the 9th of February, U-238 also on the 9th of February, 3 submarines destroyed in roughly 15 hours. Then U-424 on the 11th of February, and finally U-264 on the 19th of February. Destruction of U-264 lasted more than 5.5 hours. During the hunt, U-264 fired a Gnat acoustic homing torpedo at Starling. Walker's lookout spotted the torpedo track. Walker evaded it and detonated it with shallow set depth charges. When Starling fired her last depth charge, the U-boat surfaced. The entire crew of 51 abandoned ship and were taken prisoner, providing British naval intelligence with a wealth of information about the current state of the U-boat service. The next day, tragedy struck. HMS Woodpecker was torpedoed by U-256. Towed first by Starling and then by the rescue tug Storm King for 600 miles, she foundered in a gale off the Scilly Isles on the 27th of February, with her ensign still flying. All crew were saved, with her commander the last to leave. When the group returned to Gladstone Dock in Liverpool, the quaysides were crowded with merchant seamen, wrens, escort crews, and dock workers cheering and waving. The First Lord of the Admiralty, A.V. Alexander, was waiting to greet them personally. He told the 800 officers and crew, "Well done, jolly well done, thank you so much, God bless you all." Starling entered harbor playing Down Among the Dead Men on her ship's radiogram. Walker's signature tune, A Hunting We Will Go, was traditionally played over the tannoy when departing for patrol. The German testimony from this period reveals just how devastating Walker's methods had become. The interrogation of the entire crew of U-264, all 51 men captured on the 19th of February, produced detailed accounts of what it was like to be on the receiving end of a creeping attack. The lights failed, the crew reported. A high-pressure airline fractured. The diesels were shaken from their seats, and the extensible diesel intake and exhaust were broken. They never heard the attacking ship approach. The first thing they knew was the explosions overhead. Walker had inverted the entire psychology of the Atlantic War. Before his innovations, U-boats hunted convoys while escorts reacted defensively. Walker's support groups meant submarines were now vulnerable at all times. Not just when attacking merchant ships, but during transit, during resupply, during rest. The creeping attack was particularly terrifying because it offered no warning. By May 1943, the impact was undeniable. 41 U-boats were destroyed in a single month. Donitz's own son Peter was among the dead, killed aboard U-954. On the 24th of May, Donitz withdrew his submarines from the North Atlantic entirely. It was a tacit admission that the Battle of the Atlantic had turned. Walker's final kill came on the 6th of May, 1944. He had detected U-473 from 300 miles away, divining the submarine's likely position from intelligence reports. The final pursuit lasted 15.5 hours over 20 miles, dodging JNAT torpedoes the entire time. When U-473 ran out of air and surfaced, Walker destroyed it with gunfire. Then he signaled the order, cease firing. Gosh, what a lovely battle. During the D-Day landings, from the 6th of June, 1944, Walker's group screened the Allied invasion fleet in the southwestern approaches. For 2 solid weeks, not a single German submarine penetrated his defensive screen. He told his officers that Eisenhower wants 2 weeks. He said Eisenhower would not only get it, but that this was our chance to smash the U-boats for all time. By mid-1944, Walker was visibly dying. Even his own officers were alarmed at the gray, drawn face of their captain. His eyes had sunk back into a gaunt face that was little more than skin stretched across bones. His lean frame sagged, and his normal decisiveness was being replaced by hesitancy and an uncertain search for the right words. He was also carrying private grief. His eldest son Timothy had been killed when the submarine HMS Parthian was lost in the Mediterranean in August 1943. Walker was told he would receive a knighthood and take command of an aircraft carrier for operations in the Pacific. His wife Eileen thought that meant he would finally rest. On the 7th of July, 1944, Walker received 2 letters from the Admiralty. One officially confirmed his son's death, nearly a year after the fact. The other ordered his group to sail again the next day. That afternoon, Walker complained of giddiness and a curious humming noise in his head. He was admitted to the Royal Naval Hospital at Seaforth. Captain Frederic John Walker died at approximately midnight on the 9th of July, 1944. He was 48 years old. The official cause was cerebral thrombosis. The signal to the Admiralty stated that Captain Walker's death is considered to be aggravated by and attributable to the conditions of his naval service. His ships had already steamed out for combat without him. His funeral at Liverpool Anglican Cathedral on the 11th of July drew approximately 1,000 mourners. Admiral Horton spoke from the pulpit. His heart and his mind extended and expanded to the utmost, tiring of the body even unto death, that he might discover and operate means of saving our ships. Very great is the number of human lives that were saved by his diligent and vigilant perseverance. Since Walker's own group was at sea, the honor guard was provided by HMCS Iroquois of the Royal Canadian Navy. The next day, Walker was buried at sea in Liverpool Bay from the destroyer HMS Hesperus. His wife threw a cross of flowers onto the water. A rifle party fired a salute. Walker's tattered battle ensign flew from the staff. Depth charges were placed at the foot of the coffin. Walker's record stands unmatched. 20 U-boats were destroyed under his personal command, more than any other Allied officer in any theater of the war. His second support group destroyed between 23 and 29 submarines across its operational life, making it the most successful anti-submarine unit of the entire conflict. Under Walker's command, his support group never lost a single merchant vessel to enemy action. He received the Distinguished Service Order 4 times, with 3 bars, an achievement shared by only approximately 16 individuals across both world wars. The statue of Walker at Pier Head in Liverpool, unveiled in October 1998 by the Duke of Edinburgh, shows him in his characteristic pose. He stands in a duffel coat, hatless, binoculars in hand, looking out over the Mersey toward the sea. A former German U-boat commander donated to the fund that built it. The Admiralty's post-war assessment concluded that Walker's methods had amazing success, and more than any other factor gave the Royal Navy supremacy. A 1950 communique gave the final verdict. Captain Walker won the Battle of the Atlantic. He achieved this not from the bridge of a battleship or an aircraft carrier. He achieved it from a 1,350-ton sloop, making 20 knots. An unglamorous ship doing unglamorous work, commanded by a man the Navy had nearly thrown away. The U-boat service suffered a 75% casualty rate across the war, the highest of any branch of any military in the conflict. Approximately 30,000 of 40,000 crew members were killed. The weapon that inflicted more of those losses than any other was not a fleet destroyer, not a cruiser, not a battleship. It was a slow, tubby, purpose-built sloop that every ambitious officer in the Royal Navy had refused to serve on. If this story moved you the way it moved us, do me a favor, hit the like button. Every single like tells YouTube to show this story to more people. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Leave a comment right now and tell us where you are watching from. Our community stretches across the entire world. Tell us if someone in your family served. Just let us know you are here. Click the video on the left to watch how this cheap and nasty warship destroyed everything.